Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next installment of my interview series. I am here with Landon, the new support player for Qadsiah. I'm pretty sure I said it right. I think I said it right. I'll get it at some point in the season. It might take all season long, but I will get it. Welcome, Landon. Thank you for joining me. I wanted to talk to you about the new team, the new roster, and all of this. But before that, I wanted to maybe get a little bit of backstory and history because at the end of last year, you and the rest of SSG and pretty much the entire Overwatch scene found themselves out of contract. So how did your off-season go from getting to contractless to linking up with the new team?
So, for better or worse, I started talking with Qadsiah pretty much immediately after. Like, I woke up from my loss the next morning, and I was talking with Qadsiah.
Oh, what, were you still in
So it
Stockholm?
started, yeah, it started very quickly. So I've been working with them, like helping to figure out like the goals of the team, and then the more I talked with the org and the more I talked with management, our goals really aligned, and I was really happy to work with them.
And then, were you sort of a first through the door then, in terms of like the first player on the roster, or did they have other players they were talking to really early on as well?
From everything I know, Checkmate was the first person they signed. He was the first person they reached out to. He did the brunt of the negotiating. And then they asked him who he wanted to bring, and he brought me along.
Oh.
So then I came and I helped out as well.
And then, how quickly were you able to get the rest of the roster together in terms of like what was the kind of order of events?
I mean, it started pretty fast, and then it's really slowed down. You know, like a couple of the pieces of the roster came like right away. Like I think Haku was like already signed from last year, so Haku was
okay.
he was just there,
Yep.
right away. Same with like Ziyad, I'm fairly certain. And then Labda joined pretty quickly, but at like after Labda joined, it was like a big like month break before any other progress happened. Like with us figuring out like tank coach, if we wanted like another DPS, if we wanted another support, like that process took a long time.
Because obviously some of the roster seems to slot into place quite nicely. Obviously Haku comes in, World Cup winner, obviously complements your hero pool and sort of rounds out the backline quite nicely. When Lubda came in, because obviously we've seen you guys play a little bit in the Swiss system as well, and Lubda has been the hitscan player, even though you've also got QLM. When you signed Lubda, was that the original idea that he would kind of fill both roles, or did it just how did that sort of come about?
Yeah, if you watch a lot of streams of EU ranked, or if you just ask players who play a lot of EU ranked, Labda's primarily played hitscan for like the past better, like maybe a year. It's all he plays in ranked. I don't know the last time I saw that guy playing Pharah or Echo in ranked. He's always grinding hitscan. And so our team was looking for a hitscan player, and he got in contact and was super interested in learning the role, So QLM came along later, but Labda is our primary hitscan player.
Obviously, it means you then have quite a lot of flexibility built into the roster then in terms of like between Checkmate and Lubda especially. Like someone feels like there's no combination of DPS that aren't really open to you.
Yeah, I mean it's never been easier to swap the double flex DPS than if your Sojourn player happens to just be a flex DPS player.
And then from my impression as well was that Tread then came into the picture a little bit later. What made you go for Tread? Because obviously a few different tank options that maybe sit in a kind of similar pool to Tread in terms of, not the, I guess, like the big names like Hadi, the established names who are like probably in talks with a lot of teams, but maybe Tread, Rajaro, a few players like this who kind of emerged last year. What made Tread sort of come onto your radar?
I was going through the tank players like with our management with Checkmate trying to find a good fit. And we reached out to a good bit of like a good group of people. But one of my main things that I really wanted to have in a tank player was especially in Overwatch 2, I think you need you need like a lot to be a good tank player. But in my mind, like the two hardest skills to find are like willingness to take risks and passion to like hard grind the game, learn the small interactions, and learn the new characters pretty fast. And even during the offseason, when I was in Saudi E League grinding ranked, I swear I had tried 90% of my ranked lobbies. I could queue 8 a.m., 3 p.m., midnight, and there would just be Tread somewhere running me down on Hazard. And when I looked at the other tank options that like we could have maybe gone for, it was guys I hadn't seen since their contracts ran out.
I see what you mean. Yeah. And then maybe the part of the roster that surprised most people when you guys were announced was Junkbuck coming in for coach. Obviously, people had seen him post sort of a looking for team and that he'd left Falcons. But Junkbuck, his reputation, his history, his achievements so far, seems an incredible signing, one of the most sort of accomplished coaches in the world. How did you go about securing a guy who was surely probably like quite high on a lot of people's radars if they could get him?
So for coach, Checkmate is like much more knowledgeable about the game than me, and he has like a working relationship with a lot of coaches. So I gave a list of coaches that I was interested in working with, but with the footnote that anyone that Checkmate wants to work with should take precedence.
Yeah.
So I had no clue like how the process was going. I was talking to a few coaches, and then one day they just told me, "Hey, like we got Junkbuck."
Happy with that.
Yeah, no complaints here, man. I was blown away.
And then an obvious question that sort of follows normally when people choose to import to another region is obviously you're going to have Korean players, Korean coaches. Is there also going to be a facility or a place, and maybe for yourself as well, obviously, to play and compete from the region, from somewhere in Saudi Arabia, so you're not on high ping for the entire season?
Yeah, that's been in the works for a bit. I don't want to like leak anything, but like at least Checkmate's already currently in Saudi. I'll be en route shortly, and we're also looking at potentially just doing like a full team, like getting like as many people there as we can, just to create like a good atmosphere, because it's always easier working with people in person.
Especially when it's sort of, I imagine for a lot of pieces on this team, it's their first time working together. So it's always nicer when you sort of have that initial sort of groundwork of seeing someone in real life.
Mm-hmm. But the org's been really easy to work with for stuff like that. Like, no complaints.
Because how long have you been scrimming for now? When did you guys start?
We had to start pretty late because Checkmate was in Korea for a while. So maybe like 2 weeks-ish, give or take a couple days.
And what's been the early impression so far in terms of working with the new teammates? What are players like? Maybe especially someone like Checkmate, who maybe not as many Western players have played with before. What's he like as a teammate and an in-game player?
I mean, I worked with Checkmate for like 5 or so weeks back, like a year and a half ago, and I was blown away by him. Like his communication, his ability to set up team fights, his mechanics. Like I was blown away by him. If you ever asked me last year, like I always have highly praised Checkmate, and since then he's the exact same. He's a hilarious dude, easy to work with, as an insane hero pool. And for the rest of the roster, it's just been about like getting used to each other, seeing our strengths, our personalities, and just like sorting it all out in the first couple of scrims.
And I have to ask about Junkbuck as well. This is your first time working with him? Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
What are your early impressions in terms of working with him and what he sort of brings, and maybe even the differences between like a Korean coach like Junkbuck and maybe some of the Western coaches you've worked with before?
Junkbuck is an incredibly smart person, and he helps us with a lot of plans. I think the only thing the only difficulty I've had working with him so far is that he has like so much he wants to like speak about that there's like it's like it can be like I have to like take notes kind of. There's like a lot going on, a lot of information. But he's been fantastic. Like you can like tell right away when someone like really really understands this game. Like when someone like suggests an idea of or like a rotation or comp, and you like think about it, and like it's really easy. It's really easy to tell when someone like knows ball, and Junkbuck is phenomenal.
And then obviously with a lot of the Saudi organizations, they're also building their rosters not just to compete in OWCS, but to compete in Saudi E-League as well. So the way your roster works, obviously, with treading the roster, it doesn't work import-wise. So Ziyad would be, I guess, expected to play a lot of the Saudi E-Leagues. Are you looking forward to competing in the Saudi E-Leagues again and sort of having to do 2 competitions essentially all year?
I think more competitions are like it's always like fun as a player. I've never talked to a player who wants to compete less or play in less lands.
Yeah.
So I'm super interested in it. I think the big thing is last year when I played for Rock and SSG, I had to like really like split scrims. It was like scrim 2 blocks with 1 coach and 1 roster, then scrim a 3rd block with a different coach and a different roster, with different strengths and weaknesses. Whereas for this team, it's like change tank and we're rolling,
Yeah, good to go. I want to ask a little bit.
Same coach, same group, everything's the same.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit about the in-game structure as well, because I know you talked about Checkmate being very smart in the game. I know Tread as well has a reputation as a very vocal player as well. So what's the sort of comms balance? Do you have one person who's kind of the main caller or the leader, or are there a few different voices in the mix?
The initial plan prior to us starting scrims or anything, when it was just me, Checkmate, like discussing a potential roster, was for Checkmate, because Checkmate's a very, very vocal about like the front line. You know, like he really likes to call his opportunities, his engagements. And I'm obviously I talk a lot, I yap a lot. So the initial plan was to have me like mostly lead the back line and have Checkmate mostly lead the front line. But working with Tread, he's super, super vocal, and I think it's given Checkmate like more freedom to just play in his own tempo, find his own opportunities, and he's been going crazy.
I wanted to get your takes as well, because as we move into this new year, we're also going to get a lot of format and structure changes as well. One of the big structure changes is we're moving away from a circuit point system to a system of direct qualification. Do you prefer this as a system, or would you rather something maybe a bit longer and broader like the circuit point system?
I don't mind it too much. I think having 3 different events that each have like unique qualifications to each, I think it's kind of fine. You know, it's similar, like it's more similar to like CS:GO or something, you know, or like there are ways like I don't fully understand the relegation system, but as far as I know, like if you're like a decent team and you really lock in, like you can make every tournament, you know, and I like that.
Yeah, I think with the promotion relegation, essentially at the end of a regular season, the top 6 teams go to a playoffs, and that playoffs decides who goes to LAN. The bottom 2 teams have to go play the top 2 teams from Faceit League, and they go into a double elimination bracket and have their own sort of mini playoff where the top 2 go to OWCS and the bottom 2 go back to Faceit League Masters. So high stakes games, yeah.
Yeah, dog fights.
Yeah. And then also one of the problems that happened last year was obviously whenever there's a patch in the live game, the patch obviously hits the tournament that's going on at the same time. Are you worried at all that obviously with the patches just coming through, there could be a situation where like the regional playoffs are coming up, the most important games to qualify for LAN, and then Tuesday hits like a patch or something that changes it or throws a curveball into all the teams right before potentially like a very decisive weekend?
Yeah, I think it's definitely like something to be worried about, because it did kind of happen last year and it was just a fact that you had to live with. I think this year's looking to be pretty similar. Well, like I think we're expecting like a mid-season on Tuesday, and then main event comes. At least it's not like right away, but I expect. I mean, it's just part of competing, you know. Like stuff's gonna change. It's gonna be last minute, maybe. Play good on match day, hopefully.
Yeah, well, it kind of rewards teams that can adapt and be flexible the most. And another thing that they've introduced that really encourages the same thing is obviously hero bans that you experienced last year at the Esports World Cup yourself. I guess 2 parts of this. How do you feel about hero bans coming into the main season? And also, how do you feel about the sort of key change where the ban's going to be after roster submission rather than before like it was last year?
For me, as a player, it's really easy to like objectively see that hero bans are bad for me. But as a competitor, I really, really like them. It makes the game so much more fun to grind and practice. Like it keeps scrims really interesting. Like it makes just grinding like new characters and ranked way more fun. Like even though like it might not be the best for me like individually as a player, I really, really like it, and I think it's so helpful for the scene. In regards to changing it with roster submission before bans, I don't know. I think Overwatch has always had specialists, and I think this hurts them a lot, and it's potentially a dangerous move, but maybe it's better for the scene. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the main sort of argument in the 4 category is when we get to the LAN stage, it will make the changeover between maps way more efficient. Because you submit your roster, and then the players, if you're changing players, you'll go start setting up on stage, and while you're setting up on stage, the coaches will be able to do the bans, and then it cuts out a lot of the time in between that maybe we had no sort of extended breaks in Esports World Cup.
Yeah, maybe it's necessary then. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess we'll see it in practice. Probably the nice thing about this as well is this is the sort of thing the Overwatch esports department can tweak and change during the season without massively disrupting qualification or anything like this. You know, they can just change it stage to stage, so there's always room for change.
Yeah.
Then the other change, which is one I'm not as sure what to make of, they've changed the map pool in the sense that it's gotten smaller, but they've also changed the map pool in terms of the groupings of maps. So we've got Push and Clash are still combined into, you know, one mode essentially, or combined modes. But now Hybrid and Flashpoint are also going to be combined into a mode. What's your take on this change? Do you feel like it's better, worse, just slightly different? Obviously,
I kind of like a smaller map pool, but the groupings are so weird. Like Clash and what's it called? Flashpoint felt like they're real similar game modes. Like they feel very similar to play. They were like a natural groupings.
Same type
of changing it around with like push, like if anything, like Escort and Hybrid like should maybe be in the same group because they play the same, you know. What like push is like it's like such a different type of game, you know. Whereas like Flashpoint and Clash, like it feels the same, you know.
It feels as well because what this does as well, it means we only have four groups of modes essentially. So what's going to happen on the map 5 losers pick is the same thing that would happen in a longer series as well, where you can then pick from all the modes and maps again, which means that loser pick in map 5 is going to become so powerful in terms of closing out a series or something, combined with the hero bans and everything.
Yeah, I like the smaller groupings. I just think they're kind of just strange. They could maybe shuffle them around a bit.
Yeah. And then obviously, your season, as we're speaking when we're recording this, has started. You have successfully qualified out of the Swiss. We're recording this just after the second day of Swiss has ended. So you've got the knockout bracket to come up. How did you find playing through the only Swiss stage this year?
I mean, Swiss is always like 80% fun, 20% just waiting, you know?
Yeah.
So a lot of it was fun. Like we played some interesting teams. The TU match was a blast. I really wish I'd won that one. But it was fine. Like it's Swiss, you know. It's exactly like what you expect when you sign up for it.
And this interview might actually be released afterwards, but I'll get your take on it now. You're going into the double elimination bracket tomorrow, so you need to win 2 games to qualify anyway. How confident do you feel that your team can close it out over the weekend?
I'm not like remotely worried. I think like our roster strength and even outside of Hazard comp, like I think like if anything like our ability to like swap to different styles, like our ability to play like poke or brawl, you know, it's so much better than like any of these other teams in Swiss besides TU.
And I want to talk, we'll presume everything goes all right. I think you'll be okay. You'll get through and then enter the OWCS regular season. And EMEA this year feels like it's going to be, maybe aside from Korea, of course, one of the most stacked regions going. When there's a lot of teams, there's the partner teams, plus yourselves, and obviously the Ultimates, who have all invested quite heavily and put together quite strong rosters. How do you feel the sort of power breakdown or the power rankings are between what looks to be maybe like these sort of top 5 or 6 teams?
I think outside of Hazard meta or like having hero bans, I think TU should be number 1. Then I think it'll be an absolute dogfight. I don't think any of the other rosters are like as good as TU's.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of who plays better on the day, a bit of what meta favors what team slightly. Does anyone mess up their bans? Does anyone mess up this? And there's lots of like small things that could lean it in one team's favor.
Yeah.
Do you think as well, one of the expectations that comes, like when people talk about Korea, and Korea always is the strongest region, and they always have all these great teams they can just play against in their region, you know, the top 3 or 4 teams can just scrim each other. Now EMEA is looking like it's in a situation where between all the other EMEA teams, and also with the ability to even scrim some of the North American teams still, that actually there's much more depth in the West region as well. Do you think this is something that could potentially help close the gap between the West and the Korea, having a greater investment and a greater number of teams vying for the top?
I mean, for sure, having 5 strong teams in Europe is definitely going to help out with scrims. Like last year was pretty dry. The only issue right now is like half the teams aren't scrimming, you know, because their imports aren't here yet.
Yeah.
And then some of the teams don't want to scrim us. But I think for the region as a whole, it does look pretty nice.
Why don't the teams want to scrim you?
I think, I mean, not to start some massive beef here, but I'm looking at beating Twisted, you know? Twisted said they don't want to scrim versus us until we beat them. So I'm going to make sure that happens on our very first match.
Not quite included not quite included at the table yet, Ben. Have to earn your keep.
I mean, I'll more than earn my spot. Don't worry.
And then, obviously, big season ahead of us. It's all going to kick off proper. Well, obviously, you've still got the tournament this weekend, and then it will kick off proper on the 31st into a regular season. As we go into this, obviously, a new organisation coming into Overwatch. Is there anything you want to say to the sort of existing Qadsiah fans and any new fans who might potentially be looking to sign up or get on board?
I mean, I think we've got a really, really fun group. Like the group of guys that I practice with, I have so much fun. And people are improving like an insane rate. Like I would really keep eyes on our team. We have an insane org, a good group of guys working as hard as we can. Maybe the best coach in Overwatch. It looks to be a good year.
Sounds good to me. I'm sure we'll all be tuning in and watching and seeing how it all turns out as well. Thank you very much, Landon. I appreciate you taking the time. Best of luck in the rest of the tournament this weekend and obviously in the regular season going forward.
Thank you.